Hey, Tony, did I leave a pair of glasses up there?
I don't see anything.
No, nothing on the desk?
No.
All right. Then I lost them elsewhere.
Hello.
Hello,
Hi, Josh.
okay, welcome to everyone to our Wednesday, January the 4th, 2023 Board of Selectmen's meeting. Josh, if you're set to go, you can open up.
All right. All right. Give me just 1 second here. Opening comments. Winter parking ban is in effect until March 20th, 2023 from 12 a.m. midnight to 6 a.m. For a complete list of rules and regulations or for more information, please visit the parking clerk page at nahant.org or the Nahant Police Department page at nahantpolice.org. Christmas tree curbside pickup. The DPW will be picking up Christmas trees curbside until January 13th, 2023. You must remove all lights, ornaments, garland, and stands prior to disposal. Do not put trees in plastic bags. Holiday wreaths, roping, and garland are not eligible for pickup. There'll be a Christmas tree bonfire Friday, January 6th. I guess that's in 2 days at 6 p.m. at Bailey's Hill. Be on time because they burn fast. And finally, the CPC grant applications for financial year 2024 are due January 31st, 2023. You can submit applications or questions to ktaylor@nahant.org, and you can find the grant application on the excuse me, community preservation page at nahant.org. Also a reminder that town hall is closed on Monday, January 16th, 2023, in observance of Martin Luther King Day. Those are all the opening comments.
Thank you, Josh. Mark, you want to take that motion if you would?
Sure. Minutes to approve. I move that the Board of Selectmen vote to approve the Board of Selectmen meeting minutes from December 7th, 2022.
Seconded.
Discussion?
Yes, I sent you an email just a few minutes ago. Maybe you haven't had a chance to see it yet, but I noticed that the minutes said that Mark was absent, but he was not absent. So I don't know if that's something that can be corrected on the fly. It was PDF,
Yeah.
so I couldn't really edit it, but.
I think she meant absent-minded.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, we can correct that. So
How do- how do we-
duly
do we-
noted.
we put that into the motion?
Yeah, I think you could motion to approve the minutes with the suggested amendment.
So
We have to read it?
You have a motion on the floor right now to approve the minutes?
Yes.
Can we, let's see.
You can withdraw the motion and
Yeah.
move to amend the minutes.
I move to withdraw the motion and amend the minutes.
seconded.
Josh Antrim, aye.
Not gonna lie.
Gene Canty, aye.
I move that the Board of Selectmen vote to approve the Board of Selectmen meeting minutes from December 7th, 2022 with or pending the change to Mark Cullinan being present for the vote.
Seconded.
Second. No discussion? Roll call vote.
Josh Antrim, aye.
Not gonna lie.
Gene Canty, aye. Ongoing business. Before Tony gets into it, does anybody have any ongoing business they'd like to discuss?
Not at this time.
I'm all set, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Okay, Tony?
Okay, so from the first item on the agenda is to discuss potential upcoming town meeting articles. So it's really a discussion amongst the board. I can tee it up, if you will. We've discussed individually, myself with each member of the board have discussed a few different warrant articles for the upcoming town meeting. We're working on a improvement to our bylaw regarding feeding of wildlife, which is related to the coyote issue. We're talking, we expect to have a bylaw, a draft bylaw from the short-term rental committee by the end of the month. And I will be, I'll connect with the short-term rental committee in the near future to make sure that we're still following that schedule. We've had some discussions regarding potential conservation restrictions on some of our open spaces to ensure long-term protection of those spaces. We're still going through the process of the details of that. And we've had a few discussions about, capital projects and CPC, Community Preservation Act, potential applications as well. So does the board want to discuss any of those in open session with all three, while all three of you guys are here?
Those were basically the ones I had in mind, and that you and I have talked about, Tony. The Stantec sign study. Are there funds? Were funds approved for actually implementing the sign changes?
No, we received the result of the finals of the study in the current fiscal year. So we potentially could use Chapter 90 funds for some of those improvements. But our Chapter 90 funds are pretty limited and already programmed towards townwide paving improvements on a 5-year plan. So we're likely going to need to either utilize free cash or appropriate some sort of funds or authorize some borrowing in accordance to the recommendations from that study at the upcoming town meeting, so that we can accomplish some of that work in FY23 starting July 1st.
And similar,
Tony, could you put that study up on our website so people can take a look at it?
Yes.
and similarly, the Stantec study included sidewalk improvements, so that would be similar.
Yes. So the challenging part for us is we have to layer in, when it comes to sidewalks and paving, we layer into other scheduled work regarding underground utilities. So we look at our 5-year plan for water work, for sewer work, and for stormwater work. We coordinate with National Grid for any type of underground gas work that they're going to do. And then we try to schedule all of that, based on the paving schedule. So sometimes the paving schedule, which takes a look at our current road conditions and suggests which roads need to be worked on, first. Same thing with sidewalks. Those don't always line up with each other. You might have a great sidewalk and a really bad road, or vice versa. And then that may not perfectly overlap with planned national grid work or stormwater or sewer or water work. So looking at each of those studies individually, you'll kind of gather some information, but really there's a collective overlapping of all those different plans that we have to adjust on an annual basis.
Mhm. And then just as a reminder, the conservation restriction on Nahant's open spaces and natural resource areas. Just as a reminder for folks, the idea behind this is that a conservation restriction wouldn't be subject to the vagrancies of an individual town meeting vote that could change the zoning bylaws and make potentially put some of those places at risk of development. So the conservation restriction, this is something that Shannon Bianchi on the planning board has also brought up in the past. So it's something we've talked about at a previous meeting, but just as a reminder to folks, that's the basic idea behind that. I don't think we're going to have, Mark, you're probably in the best position to answer this as a member of this committee, but we won't have any housing production plan or affordable housing articles ready for this town meeting. Is that the expectation, or is it too soon to know?
Yeah, that's my understanding. We have a preliminary schedule that MAPC gave us, and it doesn't appear that we'll have anything ready for this town meeting.
When's your next meeting? Do you know? Is that scheduled?
Tomorrow night. Tomorrow night.
Tony, given the length of time that the housing plan committee will be out working, we do expect the short-term rental to be completed for town meeting, do we not?
That's what the committee signaled to us a few weeks ago, that they intend to send us a draft bylaw by the end of the month to be included in the warrant for the upcoming annual town meeting.
Okay.
So there's some process there that if the bylaw triggers any type of zoning change, there's a process that would require the planning board to review the bylaw, have a public hearing, and produce a recommendation. So if that recommendation is, if the goal of the planning board is to have that recommendation included in the finance committee's report and recommendation that gets mailed to every household, then there's a pretty aggressive timeline in which those things have to occur. And we've mapped that out and provided that to both the short-term rental committee and the planning board committee.
Yeah, Tony, we discussed today in your office, it would be nice if the planning board and the short-term committee could get together in a joint meeting, because I know that the planning board has some recommendations, and the Airbnb committee does too. So it'd be nice to that they could come together on that prior to the final draft.
I'll try to connect with both chairmen and see where they are and see if I can, work with them to get them on the same page if they need any assistance from us, so that we can be ready for this year's town meeting.
Yeah.
Mark, like Tony and I talked about it today too, and I think one of the things here is just to be sure we know what direction each is going in, and then collaboratively how we pull it together.
Well, I mean, the short-term committee was formed by a town meeting vote. Planning board is an elected board. It would be nice if they could get together. From what I understand, they're pretty close on, pretty close in agreement. It would be nice to have them jointly file the report in the article for the warrant, because we don't want two different, a board and another committee at odds with one another at town meeting. I think it would be best if they got together and tried to make sure that they're in agreement with what's being presented to town meeting.
Tony, you'll handle that.
And I don't know if we, we want to have that be a joint meeting with the Board of Selectmen as well, or at least make sure one of us is present, because, we don't want to have, we obviously want to be in support of whatever comes out. So better to get our inputs and thoughts in earlier rather than later, I guess.
Yeah.
That's all I had in mind for warrant articles beyond the formal stuff. I don't know. Mark, you or Gene had anything else?
No. There are a couple articles that will be in the community preservation package that we can discuss later, including rights of ways and things like that. But I did go over them with Tony today, and I'm pretty much in agreement with everything he has on the board.
Yeah. We probably talked about some of the same ideas for the CPC funding. So the funding for the rights of ways for some title search stuff and surveying and marking potential safety stuff. Getting the rights of ways on some kind of map that's on the website, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Tony had mentioned tree planting at the golf course and bridge repair. Possibly some pickleball lines. And I guess maybe the conservation restriction that we just talked about, the surveys for that, funding for those surveys.
Tony, what's the process for moving the conservation restriction along? What involvement is there?
So, we're talking about conservation restrictions on property that the town already owns and open space that is already treated that way. I think, it would be a simple warrant article, identifying those properties, probably by their deed registration, their book and map number. But we might want to be a little bit more specific with some surveying and mapping of, portions of those properties that would be included. And there's other research I want to do ahead of time as to, what the long-term impacts of those conservation restrictions would be on those properties, so I'll get together with town council and come up with some proposal to put in front of each of you to be considered.
Just for those watching tonight, what we're considering at places like Lodge Park, Lowlands, compost area, golf course, Bailey's Hill, those areas that are already designated as natural resource areas. But to put an additional layer on there to protect them from future development.
Well, I brought that up today to Tony. We talked about the natural resource areas, whether they needed conservation restrictions or not, because they are wetlands and floodplains and coastal embankments. And based on what you said, Tony, it's just another insurance that we develop for ourselves.
Originally, we started looking into this as, a branch of our housing production plan and GLAM analysis. And it turns out that we actually wouldn't need these additional protections as far as our GLAM analysis goes. We owners, town being the owner of these properties, and the way that they're currently zoned, they are not included in the denominator of the GLAM analysis, which is your general land area. And And so even though putting these additional restrictions on these properties will not make any sort of impact on our housing production plan, the board, all three of you have been, strong supporters of open space and protection of open space and natural resources. And in all of our conversations I've had with you individually have, stated that, it's time the town looks at, that long-term protection to ensure that these spaces are protected in perpetuity from potential development, because, there's so few open space and natural resources in the town, and we want to make sure that we protect them long-term. So it would be more of a conservation approach and a general protection approach. It actually, for anyone that's been paying attention in the past, it actually would not have any impact on our on the housing topic, but still a valuable effort to pursue.
Thank you. Great summary. Any other questions or discussion on the warrant articles?
No.
Okay, Tony, you want to talk a little bit about 9 Little Nahant Road?
Actually, I'm gonna let Dan give the update.
Great.
Well, the auction, we had not we, but HUD had about a month ago or so now, didn't net any bidders except HUD. So they bid the minimum. They took possession. They filed the foreclosure deed about a week or so after that. Now it gets the matter gets transferred from where it is now in HUD to its National Process Center. And then they contract with a vendor, a private vendor, to sell the property to the highest bidder at some point in the future. That won't happen anytime soon, but I'd expect it to happen within maybe 6 to 12 months, something in that area. I have a call tomorrow with HUD's attorneys to talk about, I think they're curious about what's due on taxes and whatnot. And Ed Locke's been very helpful in providing some information in that regard. So that's what's happening now. One question that's come up recently is the abatement that we were able to obtain through Sheila's help in the run up to what we thought was going to be a sale for 1.64, which fell through eventually. Well, that abatement had a 6-month lifespan, which is now expired. So what we're going to do now is wait until the property is sold. Then we'll know how much of an abatement we will need. And I've been in contact with DLS, and they know that application is coming. They're just waiting to get it. So I expect that to go through relatively smoothly. So we're really just in a holding pattern at the moment. I don't expect anything very tragic to happen during tomorrow's call. But if anything does come out of that, I'll let Tony know, and he'll let you guys know individually. But we're really just a holding pattern now. We're in a better position than we were a year ago, so that's good. But we're going to put something to paper with HUD to ensure that we get, I think we decided like basically 24-25% of whatever the total sale is after the cost of the sale are taken out, which is consistent with the deal we had at the forefront when we were considering that $1.64 million sale. So we're going to make sure an agreement sort of goes along with the property wherever it goes inside HUD, so it doesn't get lost in the translation somewhere along the line. And HUD is very happy to do that. They've offered no resistance at all. So that's where we are.
Great, excellent, thank you. Anyone else on 9 Little Nahant Road?
I guess I'd just say that, just to be clear, the town's only involvement in 9 Little Nahant Road is to make sure we get as much as possible of the deferred taxes. Beyond that, that's the limit of our involvement.
Yeah, HUD is now paying the currently coming due taxes, like for fiscal 24, they've been, or 23, they've been paying the taxes that come due currently. So it's only, like you said, the deferred taxes that sort of ripened into a tax title that are the issue, and the interest, of course.
And I think for those listening in that don't exactly know where 9 Little Nahant Road is, it's that big Victorian in the middle of Little Nahant with the big spire on it that's been slowly eroding over the years.
It's called the Howe Estate in certain real estate.
State. Thank you. Okay, Tony, section 3A of the chapter 48.
So there was an article, I forget in which newspaper recently, talking about the Globe, talking about section 3A of chapter 40A and MBTA communities' next deadline. The end of January is a deadline for communities like in the category that Nahant is in to submit an action plan. Tomorrow, the Housing Production Plan Committee will be meeting. This will be a topic of discussion with MAPC, who's really taking the lead on assisting the town in abiding by this new requirement as an MBTA community. And I'm not fully aware of how strong of a deadline this is and how heavy of a lift it is. We'll get more information from MAPC on that tomorrow. It may be as simple as a statement of intent as to how we're going to approach this requirement. But if you recall, the guidelines that were released regarding 3A and penalties for non-compliance were if you didn't comply, you would lose the ability to receive funding through certain sources of grants that we actually don't qualify for now as is, so or don't actively utilize. So I'm not too concerned unless I learn something different from MAPC tomorrow night. I think we're in pretty good hands. That MAPC's technical assistance is funded through a state grant. So, I think we're in pretty good hands, and they'll make sure that we're meeting whatever requirements are set upon us.
Yeah, in the article, it was on the 28th of December in the Globe, and it was really about Mayor Driscoll, who apparently has implemented some strong housing programs in Salem. But it says questions have swirled around how it will work while a big deadline approaches at the end of January, when communities must submit an action plan detailing how they'll implement the new zoning. So it's a long article with a short stint on the MBTA.
Yeah, like I said, we'll get more info on it from MAPC. I believe we're in very good hands there, and they'll help us abide by that requirement. I think it's a pretty short time frame to turn around a exhaustive plan. I imagine that the requirements are fairly high level at this point, but we'll learn more tomorrow from John and his team during the housing production subcommittee meeting.
Thank you. Any further discussion on that, on the section 3A, 48?
No.
Hearing none, we'll move along. Josh, you want to talk about, do you have anything to talk about with?
Not much, really. I talked to one of the eminent domain lawyers this afternoon to get an update. And really the only thing on the near-term horizon is he expected the deposition scheduling would start in the next week or so. And that's really about it.
Okay, anything, Mark?
No, I'm all set.
All right, town administrators report. Mr. Barletta.
Okay, thank you, Chairman Canty, Selectman Cullinan, and Selectman Antrim, for the opportunity to provide this state of the town. The town of Nahant, through your leadership and support from its residents, has accomplished many great milestones over the recent years. And we collectively seek to continue that great progress in 2023 and beyond. I want to start by thanking our residents, our volunteers, and our elected officials for taking pride in our community and for dedicating their free time to the many items that are in front of us. I also want to thank our employees for their relentless commitment to going above and beyond their individual responsibilities so that we can be successful in serving the residents of Nahant. Contribution and attendance at our annual town meetings and special town meetings has been impressive over the past few years. And because of that, the finances of our community have been solidified through sound business practices. As of July last year, the end of fiscal year 2022, the town maintained healthy balances in all of its funds, with an estimated free cash amount of $900,000 in the general fund, $500,000 in the water sewer fund, and $30,000 in the rubbish fund. Additionally, the town had a balance of nearly $420,000 in its stabilization fund and nearly $80,000 in the other post-employment benefits or OPEB stabilization fund. At last year's annual town meeting, the town appropriated an additional $250,000 into our stabilization fund, bringing the balance to nearly $670,000. And town meeting approved an additional $25,000 into the OPEB stabilization fund, bringing the balance to just over $103,000. I am happy to report that through your support and the support of the Advisory and Finance Committee, these funds have tripled in size since fiscal year 2020. The town continues to follow municipal finance best practices by appropriating free cash to one-time, non-reoccurring expenditures. In the current fiscal year, FY23, the town appropriated $1.5 million in general fund free cash, $695,000 in water sewer retained earnings, and $60,000 in rubbish retained earnings for various capital improvements and equipment purchases, as well as paying down debt. Additionally, the town is dedicating $350,000 in ARPA, American Rescue Plan Act, funds for a new fire truck. The town continues to actively pay down its short-term debt to avoid issuing long-term debt, which results in significant savings on interest costs. In fiscal year 22, the town paid $880,000 in short-term debt when only $573,000 was due. The town plans to continue this practice in fiscal year 23. Also, in fiscal year 23, the town's tax rate is $9.09 per $1,000 and is again one of the lowest tax rates in the Commonwealth, number 37 out of 339 tax rates that have been approved to date. And we will likely be the lowest tax rate in Essex County. It has been our goal to improve the balance of revenues and expenditures without negatively impacting our residents. Most of our revenues come from real estate tax, and because its annual increase is capped by the state law of Proposition 2.5, we have sought out new revenue streams such as local meals tax and local short-term rental tax, and have continued our aggressive approach of securing federal and state grants. In less than 2 years, the town has brought in nearly $150,000 through those local taxes. And from fiscal year 19 through fiscal year 22, the town of Nahant has secured over $5.3 million in federal and state grants. Another way we have improved our annual budget, and in doing so, accomplished some of our climate change goals, has been through the utilization of the Green Communities Act. Since fiscal year 21, we have completed nearly $600,000 worth of energy efficiency projects, primarily funded through grants and utility incentives, and only costing the town about $42,000. In return, we have realized an annual savings of nearly $127,000, an electricity savings of nearly 348,000 kilowatt hours, and an annual greenhouse gas savings of 179 tons of CO2. This is the equivalent of planting nearly 3,000 trees or taking 38 cars off the road annually. This past year, the town reached substantial completion of our sewer main replacement project on the Linway. Because of the successful passage of multiple town meeting articles authorizing the town to borrow over $20 million for sewer infrastructure, we are on a multi-year plan to rebuild nearly the entire wastewater system, providing our community more than 50 years of new life to this critical asset. This year, we will begin a $5 million project to rebuild the heart of our wastewater system, the Ward Road Pump Station. Other significant capital improvements accomplished over the past year include the completion of the Flash Road basketball and tennis courts, the Fort Ruckman Park revitalization, historical exterior work to the library and town hall, installation of fiber cable connecting all town buildings, and townwide paving. We've also completed and updated our town's open space plan, our hazard mitigation plan, a lowland stormwater alternative analysis, and have begun the process of developing a housing production plan. Climate change preparedness, protection of our open spaces and natural resources, and increasing our affordable housing stock will continue to be a top priority in 2023. We look forward to continuing our work in all of these spaces and serving the residents of Nahant. And finally, I want to thank the Board of Selectmen for their confidence and their support. And I'd like to wish all of our residents a happy new year. Thank you.
Thanks, Tony. That was a great summary.
Great
Yeah.
job.
Yeah, I gotta say, it's easy to forget, but just 3 years ago, we were in pretty tough shape financially, and the contributions that building up of the stabilization fund and the OPEB fund, with obviously the support of the voters and stuff, it's been quite a turnaround, and I think it speaks to you, Tony, as town administrator, and this board, and as you said, advisory and finance committee, open space committee, all working cooperatively and pulling in the same direction with the support of the voters. We've gotten our financial house in order, and I think we've gone a long way to protecting and maintaining and enhancing our conservation and open spaces and public parks. And all the while, like you said, getting after these infrastructure issues that had been lingering for a long time, most notably, of course, the sewer main replacement along the Linway. So, taking on these issues has not always been easy, and it's not always as fast as we would like it to. I think we've done a good job as a group I don't mean the Board of Selectmen alone. I certainly mean, the whole group of committee members and voters and everyone involved in identifying these critical issues like housing and the lowlands area and coastal enhancements, all those things that we have to get after. And it's good to see progress being made on these things. So, and thanks again for your summary, Tony.
Tony, if I could, the one thing that impressed me the most is, and you certainly don't have to impress me, but you'll recognize this when I say it. Every time I've come up with an idea or a thought, a project, you've either already started it or you've got it in the balance. So I'm sure that we all appreciate you being more than on top of things. Thank you.
Thank you.
Like you said, Tony, it takes a village and all of the employees and all the town residents to come together to get all these things done. But it takes a leader to organize that, and you really served that role admirably. So thank you.
Thank you. It really is a team effort. There's no volunteer or elected official or employee that doesn't wear multiple hats, that does, has multiple responsibilities. And, our staff comes to work every day committed to serving the residents of the town. And, without their support and their initiative, that none of these projects get done. And, we're stretched pretty far, but I would say that there's a commitment to the town that it's a natural commitment to the town. People that work for this community really love this community. And so there's a lot of just self-motivation here. And, we have a great team, and of course, great support from the residents and from you, the board. So thank you. And, we look forward to another great year.
Thank you, Tony.
Can I just add one more thing, Mr. Chairman? Yeah, Tony, certainly you make our job a lot easier. And I want to say, Selectman Canty and Cullinan, it's my pleasure volunteering my time with you guys. I know you feel the same way as I do, which is our only objective is to do what's best for the town of Nahant. There's no egos, there's no struggle here. It's just commitment to volunteering our town, volunteering for our town, for the enhancement of our town, and that's really it at its core.
Touche, Mr. Antrim. Okay, Citizens Forum.
Okay,
We
so
there
I'm gonna do
already?
Citizens Forum the same way as we did the last meeting. If you're interested in speaking, you can send a message in the chat. You can raise your hand through Zoom, and again, please announce your name and your address and try to keep your comments to 2 minutes. Francine?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thanks for letting me speak. Just wanted to give a little update of some
Can you
things.
just say your name and address,
I'm
please?
so sorry. Francine Amari Faulkner, 295 Nahant Road. Sorry, my birds, I don't know what it is. Anyway, I wanted to let you guys know a couple things I think you'd be interested in. We started a Facebook page called Nahant Coyotes, and it's offering great information, and we've received a lot of really great feedback on our new page. A lot of people jumped on. I think people are really appreciating the in-depth articles about behavior And it's been absolutely fantastic. We also were inspired by another resident who said we should have our own team. So we've organized a team, a hazing team, where people will be educated to haze the coyotes, and there'll be team leaders. We've made coyote scare sticks available for residents who are afraid to walk their dogs, or who are just older, or anybody who's afraid. We've made these scare sticks, and we're going to give them out to people for free. Have a couple people lined up already who are going to take them. We'll be giving them instructions with them so they understand how to use them. And it's a way to empower residents and make them feel a little safer. It's giving them a tool. I mean, you don't need a tool to haze a coyote, but this will empower residents. So it's a really good thing. Rebecca ran another workshop. It was really well received, and we're going to be doing another one later in the month. She's been guiding us on coyote activity, which is way down, by the way, because we've been logging and tracking and mapping all the activity. It's way down. And I suspect that has to do with the goal milestones of the year and all that. We actually have identified a couple of places where coyotes are getting handouts. So I think that's pretty important information that you all are going to want to know. And one more time, we could really use guidance from an expert. And I really hope you guys are going to consider inviting Rebecca in to develop a coyote response plan, and also help with the bylaw for, with fining and all that. So I think that's pretty much what I wanted to pass along. A lot of really great stuff happening. I hope you'll be open to it, and we're happy to share it with you. We're doing good work, and I think it's having a good impact. So
Great. Thank you,
Thank you.
Francine. I'll be sure to follow up with you on a few of those items.
okay,
Thank you.
thanks.
Francine, this is Gene Campy. I'd like to say I appreciate the effort you guys are making with this. Tony and I talked about this at length today, and I know he talked with Mark and Josh as well. And it is truly our goal to work with this and make this an absolutely livable situation. So thanks for getting involved.
Okay, Brendan?
Yes, Brendan Baronic Olmsted, 2 Summer Street, Nahant. I had a follow-up question about the designating the conservation lands, or adding that conservation restriction to existing open space. Is any of that action going to impact your ability to get permits for the seawall defenses, such as like in Margin Park, the seawall along the park towards the harbor is deteriorating? So if the park was marked as additional conservation, is that going to prevent you from doing those types of seawall repairs?
So it's a good question, Brendan. Obviously, that wouldn't, our intent would not be to tie our hands in that aspect. So those are questions that we're going to discuss with town council as we move forward. I would think that that wouldn't be the case, but certainly we can adjust for that if it is an issue.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I don't have a name, but on the screen it says iPad 3.
Okay, iPad 3, we're waiting to hear from you. You can speak. Guess not. Is there anything in the chat, Tony?
No.
See Michelle Capato has her.
Michelle? Hi, Michelle.
Hi, Happy New Year, everyone. Can we get an update on the Coast Guard housing?
Please state your name and address, please.
Oh, sure. Michelle Capano, 29 Ocean Street.
Michelle, what kind of update are you looking for?
Just in terms of status, I know it's tough with so many activities going on, but where are we in terms of working with the existing tenants that are there that haven't moved? Are they still paying rent? And how are we, what's the timeline in terms of starting to remediate the property so it's the subdivision can go through and they're available for sale?
All right, so I'm asking Dan Script to unmute because we are going through, a legal process related to the remaining residents there. So we may be limited on how much we can discuss in open session, but I'll let Dan talk to that. And then as far as following, the direction of town meeting regarding demolition and hazmat removal, what we're actually the same consultant that we're working on, that we're using for our Ward Road Pump Station project, is going to be doing an analysis for us of what hazardous material may exist at the property so that we can develop a scope to include in the procurement of those services. So he hasn't visited the property yet, but it's scheduled for the next week or so. Dan, do you want to?
Sure. As for the legal aspect of it and clearing out the homes, there were 12 units in all. 5 are still being occupied. 1 we expect to be cleared out next week. The other 4 are really digging in their heels. We were in the housing court session at Lynn District. They, through their legal aid counsel, will all have the same attorney, transferred it to Salem at the Northeast Housing Court. And we just had what we call a status conference / mediation earlier a week ago now. There was no success, no movement in terms of trying to broker an agreement or seek a date when these folks can leave on their own terms. So now we are simply going through the process. They're exerting their rights to the due process, and that's okay. The next step is to get a trial date for the 4 remaining tenants, and then we'll take it to, they all asked for jury trials, so it looks like we're going to a jury, even though I don't see a lot of factual issues here. In any event, you can expect them to appeal it to an appellate court, so it's going to be a while, but they're in a tough spot. We sympathize, we empathize. It's a tough market out there, even for a very willing mover, so to speak. So they're doing what they can to keep a roof over their heads, and we understand that. But at the same time, we have the will of town meeting to honor, and that's what we're doing. So we're in that process now.
Thank you, Dan. I don't have a name. It says iPhone.
Hello?
Yes.
Yeah, hi. It's Dave Aldrich, 163 Willow. So I'd like to, it's a 3-part question / position. So beginning about 5 years ago, with sea level rise, we were getting more and more washover on Tudor Beach Wall onto Willow Road, and it continues to get worse and worse. There's one storm drain that is halfway between Winter and Willow, the summer, and that is 3 feet below the grade of the road. Once all the water, and I have it all on video from the last storm, I'm not sure if you're aware, but we just put in a big revetment wall, which worked incredibly well, and we had very little washover. But because the 2 antiquated storm drains that are on either side of Willow Road, which are somewhere between 65 and 80 years old, sits 8 feet below Willow Road's grade and sits right on the ocean floor, that once the tide becomes high enough, it's physically impossible for those drains to work. So for the first time, we had no water coming over our wall because of the revetment wall. But because of the poor drainage, it built up on Willow and Summer, and then backed up and came over and flooded our yard again and put us back in the same position as we were before our revetment wall. And so I requested 3 years ago to raise the curbing in front of our house to the storm drain, and it hasn't been done. And then I've also 2 years in a row put in and sent along the available grants from EOEEA and Bill Hinckley for the rebuilding of Tudor Beach Wall. So my question is, where do we stand with those submission of those grants? And what immediate action can you do, which I think is pretty simple, if you put in a discharge line like over by the Christie's house at 66 Ocean and Marginal that services the storm drain, and it goes high above grade and it goes right out into the ocean. And that is a volume point, like our house is a volume point. But there's no way for it to discharge back into the ocean because A, it's below grade by 8 feet, and they don't have clapper valves. So I'm just wondering, what immediate steps can the town take, since they're all committed? I mean, they're listening on this commitment of, servicing all the residents. What can be done immediately to stop this flooding, which seems to be a very relatively easy fix? And that's what I'd like to say.
Okay, so I had, originally you said a 3-part question, Dave.
Yep.
But I only got 2.
So it's the drainage on Willow Road, it's the raising of the curbing, and it's the EOEEA grant, which you have a copy of from Bill Hinckley. Those are the 3 points. So again, these are, if you go down, if someone walks the beach and starts over by the Jenkins house and walks towards our house, you can see that there's only one discharge pipe. And we don't need a major engineer study. If you tied in a discharge pipe, and 4 years ago, we gave permission to go across our property to put that pipe in. If you tie it into the 2 storm drains that are currently there, and because the ocean is rising at such a high pace, if you have some place for it to go out, it wouldn't have flooded. And I think the worst property that got hurt was the Cadigans property. And that's way down, past obviously our house, because they're in the lower floodplain. And all of that could have been prevented if we had a drain pipe like the town inserted over by the Christie's at 66 Ocean Street.
So I'm not aware of the drain pipe that you're referring to at 66 Ocean Street.
Okay.
We don't, if there's a drain pipe there, similar to around town, it would be a gravity outfall pipe with a clapper valve or not. Only produce, is only, it's only going to work when the tide recedes, right? So we don't have a manual pump, a force pump outfall pipe on that side of town. You might be confusing it with our sewer system, that there's an underground pump station there, but that's for sewer, not for
No.
stormwater.
Yeah, I know where that is. If you drive down to that, where the two benches are, I believe it's town property. If the Christie's house is to the left, and there's that little grassed area with the two benches, and you go to the bank and you look over, there's a green PVC pipe that's well above, that services that storm drain that just,
Okay, yeah, so that's a gravity outfall pipe.
right,
That
right.
is, right, okay, so if the water level at that area is above that outfall pipe, it's not draining. It's the same problem as the outfall pipe on your side of town, that until the tide recedes, the gravity pipe isn't going to work. So
No,
when you're
no.
dealing with climate
Yeah.
change preparedness and storm flooding, there's a lot of different elements involved in it. There's a lot of different regulations and permitting, and it unfortunately is a lot more difficult for the town to gain some of that permitting than it would be, because of the regulations, than it is for a private residency like the storm wall you went through, but the seawall that you went through, the town doesn't have the same authority under the regulations. But it's certainly something that we've identified in our municipal vulnerability preparedness plan and our hazard mitigation plan as an area that needs to be improved upon. There's aside from emergency response with our DPW, there isn't an immediate fix for these items. It is a long-term process, but it's something that we have them all over town, and we're working to figure out ways to improve upon them. So heightening the height of the seawall would be a preparedness measure, a mitigation measure. Improving our ability to dewater the area once the storm comes in is another category and falls under a different set of regulations and permitting. So unfortunately there isn't an immediate way to solve that issue, but it's definitely something on our radar, along with many other spots around town.
Well, I would, and I'm not challenging you. I would just ask you to go and look at the pipe that I'm referring to. And it is so far above the grade. There's no way, it's physically impossible unless we have a tide that comes almost all the way up to the top of that revetment wall by the Christie's.
Yeah, well, the grade, the road is higher on that side of town. Willow Road at the bottom of Summer is much lower than that spot. So, any drain, any bottom, the catch basin is, as you mentioned, multiple feet below grade. If that is submerged by a high tide, the gravity outfall is not going to work. And you have to wait. It's not going to operate properly until sea level recedes, until the tide recedes.
Well,
it will still drain it's still going to drain from the higher surface spot to
right
lower surface spot. So I think as Tony said, Dave, the topography at the end of Ocean Street is very different from in front of your house. They're 15 feet above high tide line, or 10 feet or so, whereas yours in a storm is almost even, right? Which is what you saw last week.
Well,
but where the just very quickly, like whether the pipe is 1 foot below the floodplain in Willow Road, or 10 feet below, or 6 feet, like it's probably about 6 feet. Doesn't matter, as long as if the water on Willow Road is higher than the high tide water, it drains. Doesn't matter if the end of the pipe is submerged or not.
Well, I think that maybe you should come down and see it, because I've witnessed it. And it's so low, the pipe outflow, where it sits on the ocean floor. It takes hours for the tide to go down low enough for the storm drain to release. And if we had a pipe along Willow Road that catches this new volume of water coming down Willow and pushes out above the highest tide, then we have some relief. But right now, because there's so much overflow beginning down by the Jenkins, there's not a place for it to catch and go out into over the Tudor Beach
Right, but
seawall.
that pipe is fed by a number of other catch basins
I'm aware of that.
further up the road.
Yeah.
So you can't just increase the height of the last pipe. The other catch basins won't drain to it.
Well,
So you're talking about a significant change in how that stormwater system operates. But I
Well-
appreciate your comment. It's definitely something that it's on our radar. It's definitely a priority of ours. And we'll be, I think I spoke about it with Mark, the Tudor Beach wall. I spoke about it with him today. So it's definitely something that, we're looking into and, hope to make some progress on.
all right. One last question. Has there been any movement with Bill Hinckley with the state for this grant that's available for Tudor Beach?
I think we submitted a statement of interest on it the last cycle. We have, we have many different irons in the fire, so to speak. We have, submissions in on municipal vulnerability, brick, coastal CZM hazard mitigation grant. So we're working on, a number of different grant programs at the same time, plus working with FEMA on some other, damage repair projects. So I think we put a statement of interest into that. Trey Ruthven, our coastal engineer, knows Bill fairly well. And I believe we submitted a statement of interest the last grant cycle for design services.
Mhm.
for that
Okay.
project.
And just in closing, you said that it's easier for a private citizen to put a discharge pipe than it is for the town and municipality to put one in.
The seawall.
Right?
So
In my
in the
seawall.
regulation, it says that essentially, I'll paraphrase it, but essentially you can build a hard structure to protect a pre-1978 building,
Mhm.
meaning a house.
Right.
Whereas the town, like we're dealing with that issue at 40 Steps. We're having trouble. We've had significant issues with the design, with a hard structure design getting through permitting because we're not protecting a building that was, pre-1978.
Well, my property is 1851, and Mass Fisheries would not allow us to put in 2 drains through our seawall because he said that it would add sediment and over the Spartina grass. So we tried, and they rejected it. So
Yeah.
But I thank you for your time, and then you'll let us know when you're going to be raising the curbing in front of our house to reduce the flooding.
Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned earlier, we've completed a sidewalk study and we have a number of different, needs around town. So it falls in line with the long-term plans of paving, underground utility work, sidewalk work, stormwater work. It's just managing the workload appropriately and spreading our resources evenly. So
Okay.
you'll
Thank you
know.
very much.
You definitely know. You're welcome.
What do we have left out there?
I don't have anyone else in the chat.
Okay,
Nothing else. I move to adjourn.
second. Roll call vote.
Josh Antrim, aye.
Mark Cullen and I.
Gene Canty, aye. Good night, gentlemen.
Good night, thank you.